Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. After the pandemic, have some human contact is good, isn't it? Seeing people, smelling people, and getting fleas, I don't know. But it's better than just staying behind the computer. My name is Eugenio. Is it okay if we speak English, or should I? It's okay? Okay. Well, I'm very happy to see you guys here. We are retaking the English language days that before the pandemic we were doing all over Brazil, and it has been a hit. And we have noticed that English teachers need this contact, and we exchanged ideas, and that's the whole idea, that we start to have more and more exchange of knowledge, that we show what we know, we learn from you, like I've learned a lot. And today, one of our first customers is going to be here presenting, that pretty lady there, Bruna, presenting her experience, how it was. I'm also very happy to see Concept School here today. They represent a small group, like the Sistema Educacional Brasileiro, right? If we listed all the schools they have, it would take us like some 5 hours or something like that. So it's very nice to have you guys here. And I would like to start by saying something that is curious. I have been a guy that my whole life I have despised and scorned tests. When I was a child, I would know exactly what kind of mark I could take because tests were too obvious. For instance, in English, if you learn present perfect and somebody asked you to put something in a verb tense, you put present perfect, right? If you learn, for instance, the possessive case, you know that little formula and you do that. And then when I was a grown up, and if you are in doubt, when I was a child, they had already invented English. So I'm old, but not that old. Much later, when I was an adult, I got in contact with these guys from ETS that make the Toefl, and I tried to find out what they were asking, and I couldn't. I said, oh my gosh, this is something kind of clever. And this is this opening I'm going to make to you is just to show this kind of experience and how we use the test, or we propose to use the test. Later on, you'll have much better speakers talking about serious stuff, okay? Today, we're going to talk a little bit about development process at ETS. That is fascinating. When Jean Alderman, she's there in the computer, she's in the United States right now, but when she talks to you, make a point to ask how they prepare raters when they are analyzing speaking tests. It's fascinating. So be sure to talk to her, okay? Then we're going to have Bruna Lorenzi from Santa Catarina. It's another country too, because if you know Santa Catarina, it's different. And they were one of our first customers, and they really taught us a lot about the potential of using tests as a teaching tool. So it was very welcome. And later, we're going to have this beginner, Rita Ladeia, that nobody knows. She knows a little bit of teaching, and she's coming, right? Yeah, she's somewhere here in the garden. And she's going to talk a little bit about assessment in bilingual education. Okay, in education, and it's normal that we deal with paradigms. If you have education, you have to have some paradigms, some rules to follow, and we kind of keep those rules going. And in terms of testing, that's the paradigm that we have in a nutshell. We normally have a content-based assessment. If you teach a grammar point, and if you want to know if the child really learned about that grammar point, you're going to test that, right? You're going to ask, okay, simple past, put the ED there or whatever. And then, in terms of proficiency, tests, we normally have this tendency to test at the end of a cycle, at the end of Fundamental 2, at the end of high school, or Fundamental 1, right? We normally do that because it's the end of the cycle and we want to have a certificate to the child and to the parents. But I will give you some ideas on how to break this paradigm. And what normally happens, mainly with proficient tests, is that only the best students take the test. For instance, if you want me to have a test with a ball, any kind of ball, football, basketball, baseball, whatever is round, spherical, I would refuse because I'm horrible at that. I kick to one side, it goes to the other, so I would never take a test in sports because I know I suck big time. But if I'm good at sports, I'm going to be the one to go. What happens to the school is that you know that you have some excellent students in that subject, but you do not know what's happening to the whole class, to the whole group. So I'm proposing to break these paradigms and start to use the tests as a tool. First of all, the test, the Toefl test, tests the command of English language in context. So I remember when I was a kid, yes, it's a long time ago, but I had to take one advanced test and I had to talk about, I was, I think, 13 years old. What was better, to be married or single? I was bloody single and I wanted to have a girlfriend, but nobody wanted, so I didn't know what to say. The other theme was, what's best, to rent or to buy a house? I didn't even know if my parents had a house or not, so I was totally aloof from that. So it's very important that we test the English in the context that the student is going to use. We're not going to ask a 14-year-old about the economy in Burundi, but we're going to ask, hey, what about your school? What's your biology class? What are the instructions that you receive? That's the idea. The other thing is that instead of testing at the end of the cycle, do some testing during the cycle because it brings you important feedback and security. You are sure that at the end of the cycle, you're going to deliver from one cycle to the other a student that is really able, capable, and proficient in English. That's the idea. So you can fine-tune your course and you improve learning automatically. Ha, there she is. Hello, Rita.
Hi, I'm trying to be slow.
Come discreetly here, please. And the other idea that we suggest on breaking this paradigm is that nobody is left behind, like the Marines. But really, instead of ignoring the students that do not know English or not so good in English, because it's normal, all of us, we have some tendency. Some of us are good in mathematics. Some of us are good in sports, not me. But and some of us are good in languages. So we have to know that our students are not going to have the same performance. But that's the beauty of teaching, because then you can bring the ones that need most or encourage the ones that need less. So that's the idea. Test the command of English in the context of the children, test during the teaching cycle, and test everybody. The Toefl features are some of the differentials that we have is that we have the paper-based, like everybody knows. We have the digital version that you can take in class. And now, because of the pandemic, ETS was able to develop remote proctor test. So you can take the test from your house with a camera and people are looking and they know if you are cheating or not. I don't know how to do that, but they are very good on this kind of thing. And in the pandemic, it was very useful because lots of students who were left behind were able to take the test. The other thing is that different levels are tested in the same scale. So you don't have one test per level, but you have a range of levels, for instance, from from 8 years to 11, 12 years old, you can test in the same scale. For the school, for the teacher, it's very good because you can see the evolution. And I'll show you some charts that is going to better illustrate that. Another thing that is exclusive to TOEFL tests, or if you take the Lexile test, is the Lexile measure. Few people know about this, but this is a measurement of the capacity of each student to read. So how able are you to read? And at the same time, they have classified millions of texts, from serious books to comic books to newspaper articles, in the same scale. So you can encourage your people to read by saying, okay, you are, let's say, 1,000 points. These are the books that you can read and can understand. And then you choose your theme. It's a huge library. You choose your theme, and you can read about war, about romance, whatever you want. And we provide useful data to help teachers. That's the whole idea, that we are really striving to furnish. And I'll try to show you what we do. After you take a test, we have charts, like for instance, the average total score. And we compare your school on this side with the national average. So you know where you stand. In this case, above the average. Sometimes you're a little bit below. So that's the total score. And you know where you stand. Am I doing a good job? Am I getting to my objectives? That's one of the charts that we provide you. The other one is the same kind of thing, but per ability. You have listening, language form and meaning in the middle, and reading in this case. We also have speaking and readings and writings coming now. So you can test and you can compare your school to the community. We will never disclose results of an individual school. Never, ever. That's our commitment, never to do this. But we do provide the average of the community, and you can compare yourself to the average of the community in Brazil, and soon I think we'll be able to show in the world per region, per continent, because ETS is working on this. The other thing that people take very seriously is the CEFR, right? The Common European Framework of Reference. The problem that we have with this, not we, ETS has with this, is that it's not a standard. It's just a guideline. It's not a norm. So it's a guideline. And some people say, oh, this book says it's C1, or this book says it's B2. And that's kind of relative, right? So that's the only caveat that ETS has with the CFR that's used in Europe for all the languages. And they alert that a B2 for an adult is stronger than a B2 for a child, because the child in the native language is not as articulate as talking about average. There are some people that appear in TV and say, oh my gosh, this guy is old and he can hardly speak, but I'm talking about normal people, okay? So, and if you want to see whether your CFR percentage is according to your objectives, you receive this. On this side, you have your school and the percentages in each one of the classifications of the CFR. And on the other side, you see the average of the country. Okay? That's the other thing that we do. And you can locate, okay, I'm getting to my objective or not, and then you do something. We also have an overall TOEFL score, because TOEFL uses scores. Universities in the United States, they don't know much about CFR. They know about TOEFL score. For instance, Harvard says you have to have 110 out of 120. Some other college in the middle of nowhere with no student, they say, okay, 60 is okay, you can come. It's normal because it's the demand. One thing that is obvious and is different from Brazil is that in a British, in an American, Canadian higher education institution, people are not going to grab you by the hand and lead you. They're going to say, do this, and that's your problem. You try to do it. So when you have this overall score, it helps you to see where you stand in the Toefl classification, and then you see whether your objectives are being reached or not, and what you have to do to reach it. And this last chart that we provide, I like most. This is one group of students. Let's say it's a class or a whole level. And by individual, you see the performance they have. In an ideal world, you have a vertical line right in the middle. Everybody knows everything alike. Nobody knows less, nobody knows more. But this is the real world. So what we have is that above 1, that area there, are, oh my gosh. Above 1 is where people need more challenges. There's some theories, and you know more than me, that when you say, oh, you know English already, don't study English, go study mathematics. The child translates that into, what I know is not valid. I have to study something else. But some other schools are taking this and say, okay, you know so much, I give you more challenges on this. And the result is that this guy that was very good in math or English or whatever, is going to improve his performance or his or her performance in all the other subjects too, because he's being challenged. So that's the area where you should give more challenges. Oh my gosh, me and this thing. The other area there is that requires attention are people who are lagging a little bit. They are not so well. So you may help them, give them extra work. And finally, the one that needs help are the guys that are having a lot of difficulty to learn. And the idea is that, okay, you have a lot of difficulty, you're an idiot, get out of here. No, you help the guy, right? You do something, you prepare the guys. There was one school that was having American high school, and they were passing everybody, and lots of them start to blame the school because the students were not able to take the subjects in English because English was not their forte. So what I like about this approach is that you treat every student according to each student's capacity or needs. Okay, for you to see who are the students, you receive a list like this. On your left, there would be names. Of course, I didn't put the names here, but you can list alphabetically or in score order. And you know the students, the individuals that need attention, that are way too advanced and all that, and you can then work on them individually. I think this is nice because one of the things that I think is kind of unfair in our system, in the whole world system, is that everybody should be alike. And we know that we're not alike. It's funny because for snowflakes, we think it's fascinating that there's no one snowflake like the other. But for human beings, no, you have to be just like the other guys. So this is one way that you can manage your class without humiliating or without overcompensating for some performance. Okay, definitely I had to learn how to deal with this. Here, and this is going to be shown by Bruno in another presentation, you can compare year by year, 6th, 8th, 1st, you can compare the evolution that you are really having, you see? So you can easily see how you are progressing. And let me tell you, spoiler alert, some schools are surprised because in fundamental, they are getting better results than in high school. And it's obvious. First, in high school, people start to really get some success with the opposite sex, right? Number one. Number two, they are thinking about these exams they were going to take, and they're not paying too much attention. I remember once I was the SEB. I was received by a very nice person there, director, and he told me, "Oh, tests, fantastic for children. Try to make an adult take one." And I know what he was talking about. Really, it's very hard for us to take a test. In my age, it's like having a shot in my eyes. I don't want to take a test. So that's it. So next, we're going to have the development process at ETS if we are able to make the computer work. So I'll ask you a few seconds that I'm going to put Jean Alderman to talk to you about that. Jean Alderman is, I had the honor to know her personally. She's quite a fantastic professional. She's not American, and one of her functions in the United States was to correct English teachers on the right pronunciation. She would correct natives. This is how you pronounce this is how you pronounce that. So, amazing. So let me try to see if you can talk, okay? Thank you.